Debris being cleared and bodies recovered from the crash site north of Moscow. Russia's aviation agency says Yevgeny Prigozhin was on the private jet which crashed here, and there were no survivors among the 7 passengers and 3 crew. But Kremlin has yet to confirm the death of the head of the notorious Russian mercenary force, the Wagner group. The Russian Aviation Federation confirmed that the Wagner boss was on the passenger list of the flight. Aviation monitoring website Flight Radar says the aircraft flying from Moscow to St. Petersburg ascended and descended several times before crashing. Investigators are searching the wreckage for possible causes of the crash. There's speculation on Wagner's social media channels that the jet was possibly shot down. Russian media reports say there's a possibility of an explosion on board.
It's not only Prigozhin, who was their political leader and financial backer, but also their main military commander, Dmitry Utkin, is also apparently was on that plane. That means that they have lost their financial backing, their political leader, and their military leader at the same time. And that means they're decapitated.
For years, Yevgeny Prigozhin has been running the Wagner group with mercenary recruits involved in many conflicts, including in Africa. His fighters have also been key to Russia's battlefield advances in Ukraine. But in June, Prigozhin fell out of favor with his longtime ally Vladimir Putin when he led a mutiny against the president's commanders of the war in Ukraine. Putin said then that Wagner had betrayed Russia and will answer for it. Putin later agreed to a deal to allow Prigozhin to move to neighboring Belarus, along with thousands of his fighters. Analysts say Prigozhin was a marked man for publicly humiliating the Russian government. The Wagner group says bodies from the crash site will be identified by DNA testing, and only then will it be certain that Prigozhin is dead. Osama bin Javaid, Al Jazeera.
Well, let's speak now to Daniel Hawkins. He joins us live from Moscow. Daniel, first of all, can you bring us up to speed with what's been happening in this investigation?
Well, authorities are busy gaining some traction in trying to piece together what exactly happened in the air over Tver and in the minutes and hours leading up to the takeoff of this plane from Moscow. We understand that investigators have been at Sheremetyevo airport where the plane took off. They've been looking at the hangar, the area where the plane was stood, and trying to establish who had access to the plane before takeoff. One person of interest, according to Russian media reports, is the head of the company that owned the plane. The plane was registered to Mr. Stepanov, Artyom Stepanov, I should say. Police are very keen to speak to him. That's according to Russian media reports. In terms of identifying the bodies, of course, police have said that the bodies are in such a condition any identification immediately has been impossible, though media reports are saying that the Wagner commanders have preliminarily identified these 2 bodies of Prigozhin and of Utkin. Prigozhin by part of a missing finger on his hand, and Dmitry Utkin by his height and distinctive tattoos. Again, these are not official statements. These are reports coming in from Russian media. But there is progress being made into exactly what happened. Of course, investigators are keeping an open mind in the course of this investigation as to what caused this plane to come down. It's looking like the explosion on board, though, is one theory they're pursuing perhaps more vigorously than other theories. If something could have been placed perhaps in the landing gear, caused an explosion and caused that plane to fall apart in midair and come down catching fire in that spiral, as we saw on those videos.
As you say, Daniel, no official statements, radio silence from the Kremlin, and indeed very little media coverage of this event, despite it headlining around the world.
This has been a major event in Russia, and it's made shockwaves around the world. It's been covered in a lot of the media. In Russia, it's hardly got a mention among most media. In fact, this morning, a lot of the websites hadn't been updated since last night. There's been no reaction, of course, from the Kremlin, from any official ministries. The highest-ranking, most prominent politician to make a comment was Sergei Mironov, who's the head of the Just Russia party in the State Duma, who implied on his channel that this incident, this plane crash, had traces of some sort of Ukrainian trace, essentially, implying that it was the same people that targeted Zakhar Prilepin, the Russian writer, back in May, an assassination attempt. In terms of a reaction on the ground, we've seen people come to the Wagner office in St. Petersburg, laying flowers, wreaths, candles, quite emotional imagery, actually, of a Wagner fighter breaking down in tears on his knees at a portrait of Prigozhin. That gives you some idea of how popular he was among his fighters and, of course, among the Russian public as well. He was not certainly universally liked, universally popular. He was a very controversial figure, but many people valued his public statements, considered him to be someone who spoke things like they were, spoke the truth, and said things that needed to be said about how this so-called special military operation was being conducted. No doubt we will get some official commentary once that DNA material from the bodies has been identified and the deaths are, of course, officially confirmed.
And we'll, of course, bring that to viewers as soon as it happens. Daniel Hawkins, for the moment, thanks very much for bringing us the latest there from Moscow.